On the first morning of December 1948, a man was found dead on a beach in Australia. He was leaning back against the seawall, neatly dressed, legs crossed, a half-smoked cigarette resting on his collar. He looked like he'd simply sat down to watch the water and never got up. But there was no wallet, no identification, and when police looked closer, they found something strange. Every label had been cut out of his clothes. Someone had gone to real trouble to make sure this man could never be named. It would take 74 years just to learn who he was, and even today, the biggest questions about him have no answer. This is the case of the Somerton Man. Let's go back to the beginning. The beach was Somerton Park, just south of Adelaide. People had noticed the man the evening before, slumped in the same spot. One couple saw him move his arm. Others assumed he was drunk or asleep. By morning he was gone, in every sense. The autopsy only deepened the mystery. He was healthy, strong. Somewhere around 40 to 45 years old, with the calves of a man who ran or danced. His organs were congested in a way the pathologist linked to poison, but every test came back clean. No poison was ever found. The doctor's conclusion was blunt. He was quite convinced the death was not natural. Then came the suitcase. Weeks later, police traced an unclaimed bag to the cloakroom at Adelaide railway station. Inside were clothes with the labels removed again. A vintage stencil kit was also found. Thread that matched repairs on the dead man's trousers. Whoever he was, he traveled light and he traveled anonymous. But the detail that turned this into a legend was hidden in a tiny secret pocket sewn into his trousers. Inside was a scrap of paper. Printed on it were just two words, Tamam Shud. It's a Persian phrase. It comes from a book of poetry called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, and it means ended, finished. Police now had a clue and a question. Where was the book this scrap was torn from? They launched a public appeal. And a man came forward who said he'd found a rare copy of that exact book tossed into the back seat of his car, parked near the beach around the time the Somerton Man died. That book cracked the case wide open and then sealed it shut again because in the back, faintly penciled, were two things. A telephone number and 5 lines of jumbled capital letters that looked like a code. Code breakers, including military intelligence, have studied those letters for decades. Nobody has ever agreed on what they say. Some experts think it isn't even a code at all, just the doodles of a distressed mind. The phone number led somewhere very human. It belonged to a young nurse who lived just a few hundred meters from where the body was found. When police showed her a plaster cast of the dead man's face, witnesses said she looked like she might faint, like she recognized him. But she said she didn't know him, and she took whatever she knew to her grave. For decades, that's where it stayed. A nameless man, an uncrackable code, a woman who maybe knew more than she said. The body itself was eventually exhumed in 2021 in the hope that modern DNA could finally speak. And in 2022 it did, sort of. A University of Adelaide researcher, Derek Abbott, working with American forensic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick, pulled DNA from hairs trapped in that old plaster death mask. They uploaded the profile to a genealogy database, built a family tree of around 4,000 people, and matched it to one name. Carl Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker, born in Melbourne around 1905. Now here's the honest part. Most people now accept that identification, but as of today, South Australia's police and forensic authorities have still not officially confirmed it. So we finally have a name to put to the face, but the case is not formally closed, and knowing his name only sharpens the real mystery. How did Carl Webb end up dead on that beach? Here are the leading theories. Theory 1. He chose it. Webb, it turns out, wrote poetry. The phrase in his pocket, "it is finished," comes from a book about accepting death and savoring a short life. People who knew his story say he'd struggled with his mental health and his marriage had collapsed. In this reading, the Somerton Man isn't a victim at all. He's a heartbroken man who came to the edge of the country and quietly ended his own story. Theory 2. He was a spy. This was 1948, the dawn of the Cold War. A rocket testing range was being built in the same state. A man with no name, no labels, an uncrackable code, and a mysterious nurse nearby. To a lot of people, that adds up to an intelligence operative possibly poisoned with something designed to vanish from the body. It would explain the labels. It would explain the secrecy. It just can't be proven. Theory 3, and I want to be careful here because this one is speculation, not fact. The romance. The dead man's only real link to another person was that phone number and that nurse's startled reaction to his face. For decades, people have wondered whether the two were connected, whether there was a relationship, or even a secret child. The new identification of Carl Webb does not actually confirm any of that. It remains a theory, a very human one, that some hidden love story is sitting at the center of this case. So that's where we land. A poet who chose his ending, a spy silenced before he could talk, or a love story we'll never fully read. We spent 74 years just trying to learn his name. We may never learn his ending. So, what do you think happened to the Somerton Man? Was it the poetry, the espionage, or the romance, or something nobody's guessed yet? Tell me below. I read the theories, and the best ones might make it into the next video.